Here he is. Vasilis.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me here in beautiful Nuremberg. So on your card, it said that I will be talking about, I think, native app accessibility or something like that. But unfortunately, I know nothing about that. So instead of that, I will be talking, I made up this talk right now during eating Nuremberg Wurstel, inventing the wheel. I will be talking about the web and what I like about the web especially. And I think the web is really, really easy. Let me explain you with an example that I made. So about a year ago, Smashing Magazine came out with this beautiful book about the mobile web, about designing and developing for mobile and for responsive. And there were these beautiful illustrations by Mike Kuss in it. And me and my wife, we really liked this one. And we had a wall in our hall, and we didn't like that wall. It was empty, it was ugly, there was nothing on there. So we decided to paint this thing onto the wall. So I did. Now, painting something onto the wall like this is a lot of work. Really, really a lot of work. You have to make stencils, you have to send them to a laser cutter, then you have to go get them, and then you have to paint it onto the wall. So I did that, and then it was on the wall, and as you can see, I assume you are all designers with a good eye for measure. This is not enough. The balls were too big. They have to be like this. Fuck. Now this is really a lot of work because now I had to repaint the wall first. Then get my stencils again, find out how Internet Explorer worked. Oh, not Internet Explorer. What is it? Illustrator works. Make them a little bit smaller. It was just 3 centimeters smaller for every ball. Asked my daughter to please get off my car so I can drive again to this laser cutter, get the stencils, and paint every single ball onto the wall again. And this is a lot of work. It took me weeks to get them right. And then I thought, on the web, this would be so easy. I mean, if you use the tools that the web gives us, and you decided to create this thing as a website, then you could simply make the font a little bit smaller on the HTML element, and there you have it. It's a bit smaller now, and that's why I think the web is so easy. Is that nice? I could go on for ages with this. This is just, I end up in an endless loop of resizing things. I love it. So if people, well, oh, fuck it, I have to go on now. So the web is easy. And what excites me about the web is not just that it's easy, it's that it is here for everyone. It was invented as something, one of the core principles of the web was that it was meant for everyone. And back then, 20 years ago, it was meant for people with a black and green CRT screen, and it was meant for people with a brand new 640 by 400 pixel, 256 color screen. Amazing hardware. It wasn't meant for everybody, so it should work everywhere. This is something that I really am excited about. This is why I want to work for the web. And now, what fascinates me about the web is not the fact that we have all these hipsters with MacBook Pros working on the web. No, it's that we have all these different screen sizes. These are mirrors with screen sizes. I like that work. And this, of course, is challenging, especially for people who have not been working on flexible things. And this is actually can be pretty hard. And then there's more layers to it that are even harder, like JavaScript. This is a wonderful website which collects websites that don't work without JavaScript. And this is the website itself without JavaScript. Isn't that amazing? So it is actually pretty hard to get things done on the web, it seems. So what I thought is maybe we can find other professions that have been working with some kind of flexible medium. Maybe we can learn a thing or two from them, because we've been working for 20 years now on the web and we still have difficulty with this weird medium. So other professions that have more experience. Now, the first thing that came to mind was printing things onto balloons. Now, this is not a very standardized industry, so they don't have balloon standards and things, balloon printing standards and things like that, standard committees. They don't have weblogs filled with the art of printing stuff onto balloons. So there was not much information to find there, so probably not flexible enough, not hard enough. Then I thought about tattoos. I mean, tattoos are printed on very flexible medium, right? People grow and they get smaller. But even then, this is not, I mean, this man is huge. His name is Dikke Dennis, which means Fat Dennis. He used to be my neighbor in the Netherlands. Incredibly big man, very ugly. And he was always, even in winter, he would walk around in his bare belly outside. This amazing guy. I'll just leave it on here, okay? I know you like it. But even tattoos, they don't shrink and grow as much as a website should. Then, of course, we have fashion. And I think it's interesting that fashion has the same approach to modern web development, the same approach to their medium as modern web development. They do something like mobile first. So they start with these tiny models, and then they grow them to desktop size. So these clothes fit on a desktop too. I think they take it a little bit too extreme. So I don't want to go into detail about clothing, but this, I think, is interesting. We can learn a lot about music. There have been fantastic articles about rhythm in music, that we can actually translate musical rhythm into visual rhythm, which is an amazing idea. But there's another part about music that I like. And 20 years ago, my brother moved to Luxembourg. Now, in Luxembourg, you have bankers, you have people who work for the EU, and you have farmers. And if you're not a farmer, you're probably very rich. So my brother is not a farmer, and he has all these rich friends. And we got invited to this house of a friend of his, and in the middle of this huge living room, there were two enormous speakers, something like these things. And then behind that, there was a huge amplifier in the middle of the room. And he puts on this CD, and we sit in the back of the room, and we listen to it. And it's amazing. Wow, what a sound, and what a good band. This is an amazing band. So I went back home, bought the CD, put it into my very crappy and cheap stereo player back then, and this was actually a shitty band. This was terrible to listen to. This was awful. So they didn't optimize for not that good hardware. They optimized their music only for the best hardware. Now, a friend of mine, he's a producer of rock music in the Netherlands, and of course he has his studio with amazing, powerful set of speakers there, and he was mixing a new band, and it sounded really good over this amazing stereo. And then suddenly he switched off the stereo, and behind his head he had a small mono speaker with not that good sound. And then he mixed a little bit again and said, now it's good, because now it sounds good on this crappy speaker that most kids will listen to, and it will sound good on my own stereo. And that is something that we can learn from as web developers. We shouldn't just optimize for the fantastic hardware that we have, right? Many of us have things like this, which is incredible hardware, and most people won't have that. And the interesting thing is, we always assumed, until a few years ago, that computers only got faster. and they will get faster every year. That was an assumption. So every year computers will get faster. And that's true, except for the computers that don't get faster. And this was, until 5 years ago, it was a rule. Okay, it will get faster, slowly faster. But then suddenly, Apple came out with a similar small computer like this one. And this was definitely not faster than the desktop computers we had back then. This was much, much slower as a hardware. And then we thought, oh, okay, but phones will get faster every year. Okay, so we'll just wait a few years and we'll have very fast experience on phone. But on phones, something interesting happened. This is a Firefox OS phone, and they came out a few months ago. And these are actually pretty crappy. This is not excellent hardware compared to the iPhones we have right now. But if you compare it to the first iPhone, it's probably about the same thing. It's not very different. So the interesting thing is that computers don't only get faster, they also get cheaper. So we keep working with the same old hardware. And I don't think this is a trend that will change, because we will have glasses, which are probably much slower than phones. We'll have what they call watches. I mean, it used to be, do you know what time it is? And now it is, do you know what time it is? So this changed. Nobody has a watch anymore, right? Oh, many people do. Sorry about that. So this is an assumption that we had. Then there's another assumption that bandwidth increases all the time. And this too is true, except for the bandwidth that doesn't. And there's a lot of bandwidth that doesn't get faster. We saw that in previous talk, where mobile bandwidth is actually terrible. I mean, I don't know if you've ever traveled by train in the Netherlands. Fuck, you wish you had dial-up connection, because that's more trustworthy, right? It's terrible. Or the mythical free Wi-Fi in a hotel. Oh, wonderful. Yes, I have a Wi-Fi connection, but no internet connection. So it was all true. All these assumptions were true while the web was at home or at work. So things did get faster while we had steady things. But the web now is everywhere. And remember, it is for everyone. So it should work everywhere and for everyone, I think. Now, from a designer's perspective, what can we learn from classic graphic design? So these are the people I always laugh about, paper designers, ha ha ha, you don't understand the web. But actually, they do understand a lot about proportion, and we can learn a lot from them. So if we look at layout, for instance, what makes a layout? I think, if you look at it very simply, there are three things that make a layout: typography, measure, and canvas size. And if you look at it on paper, simply said, you would choose a paper size, then you would add some white space around it, and then what's left is the measure. Then you adjust the font size so it looks good, so it reads nice, and then you have a layout. This is simply said how layout works. Very oversimplified, of course. So what is this measure that I was talking about? The measure, I think, is a very interesting thing, and we should use that as the basis for our own layouts on the web, because it's a very clever thing. We have some nice numbers that we can work with, and we are developers, so we like working with numbers, right? We can translate this to code. So anything from 45 to 75 characters is a nice measure. That's what Mr. Bringhurst said. And then Mr. Müller-Brockmann said, no, it's 10 words. And both of them are very interesting. These are very interesting things to look at. And I will show you that with some live coding. What could go wrong, right? So here's this article about what a pasta pack should look like. And actually, it looks pretty good. This is what a default browser renders it. It looks nice. There's no styling at all, but you can easily read what it's about, and you can see that there's some headers, there's some an ordered list in there, some paragraphs. It looks pretty good, but it can look better, of course. We add some typography. like some Georgia, which I like, and then I don't like the bold Georgia, so I say that header should be a normal font size, things like that, just simple things. And when I refresh this, it looks much better, of course, but you saw it already. What to do when it gets wider? Now, somewhere here it starts to look ugly, right? This is too long of a measure. This doesn't read right. It's too hard to read. So Stephen Hay, he has this brilliant idea, and he said, you just make it bigger, 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 until it breaks, until it looks crappy. And then you add a breakpoint. But Stephen Hay is a very talented designer, and I'm not. So I cannot trust my own site, right? This is not enough for me. I need rules. I need something to work with. So this is where the measure comes in. So this measure of 45 to 75 characters or the 10 words. And I created a little tool for that, which illustrates how nice this measure is to work with. So we have the Georgia font and the English language. And if we want it to be 70 characters, it will be a breakpoint of min width 31 EMs. And we all know, we all use M, right? Because that's webby. We don't use pixels. They don't scale. And you can just slide a little bit, and you can look, oh yeah, so like this, 45 characters is 20 M's. So you can just slide a little bit. But the thing, and then let us choose Verdana. And now suddenly the measure should be a bit bigger. And I think this is very interesting. This is nice to look at, that if you choose a different font, your layout should change. And now you can actually base your layout on something, and it's based on the font size. The other one I think is very, very interesting is, I think the words are actually for an international site might be much more interesting. So let's say we want a measure of 10 words. This is pretty thin, but I like it. This reads nicely. 10 words per line is very nice to read. It's very easy to read. On the web, we're used to much wider measures, like 20 words, something like that. But I think this is actually pretty nice. Now, if I switched to German, this is just 7 words. So a German layout should be much wider than the English layout. You could do that for an international site. So we work with KLM, and I actually said to them, should we maybe do this? I said, no, that's way too complex. We don't want... So there we chose for the Dutch layout, which is right in between there, between English and Dutch, like English and German, like we always are. We call this polderen. The polder culture that we have, that we talk about it until we have consensus, and that's always somewhere in the middle. So if you don't know which one to choose, choose Dutch. So now that we have this, this measure, what was it? We had English, it was an English, and we said it will be 24M. So now we just set the article to a width of 24M, and now it looks good on every browser. I don't know if you know the website of Jeffrey Zeltman. Jeffrey Zeltman would say, it's good now. This is nice. It's a one-column layout, and we don't need anything else. So back in the day, we would put widgets to the right and sub-navigation to the left, and we would make up all kinds of cruft to put in there, but right now this is good. But of course, we can play with it, because we can make it look more pretty on bigger screens. For instance, if we grow a little bit, we could say, okay, we want the first paragraph to be bigger because this is the introduction, and we want it to stand out a little bit to the left. And this is useful white space. We just won't use it. We won't do anything with it, which is a nice idea, I think. And then when we go even bigger, we could say, okay, we could do the footnote to the right and make it a marginal note. That's nice too. So we can do things like this, and when it grows and shrinks, it's a simple text-based but logical layout based on typography. Very logical, and you can translate this to SAS functions if you want to, because this is just functional. This is code. You can, even developers can work with it. They can now start designing, right, with this knowledge. So that's the little tool I created for making this layout thing work. Now, ideally, this would work like this. Article, max width 75 characters. Now, this is an existing unit. I don't think it's implemented anywhere. It's actually the width of the 0, which is an average width. It's not exactly, but you could use something like this if it's supported. Ideally, we would have something like this, max width 10 words. That would be fantastic, would be beautiful, wouldn't it? We could use some units like this for making better layouts. Now, this is terrible, I think. So this is what we could learn from graphic design, which is an old art form, right? Graphic design has been here for hundreds of years. Millions of books have been written about it. And then here comes mobile apps, native mobile apps, and we can learn things from that. And I think that's terrible. So we've been doing something wrong on the web. We haven't been paying attention. So up come here these mobile apps. And okay, let me give you an example of how we would make a website a few years ago. Now, imagine you wanted to make a website about this beautiful car. What we would do, maybe until very recently, we would start with a header, with a big logo and navigation and all the things we can imagine that have to be in the header. Then we would put a sub-navigation to the left, widgets to the right, whatever these widgets are for, I don't know. I never understood what they were for, but we always put them there. Then we would put the footer at the bottom. Ah, we're done. Here's our website. Oh yeah, and right there in the middle, people wanted cars. Well, squeeze those cars into the middle, right? So here you have your beautiful cars, your information about cars. Now the interesting thing is people only come for this thing. They come for the car, not for this thing, but for the previous car, right? How it used to be. They're not really interested in all this stuff, because if you look at this closely, what are these things? These are all links that get you out of here. So instead of, oh, you want to see this page, we say, oh, you're on this, but maybe you probably want to go somewhere else, right? Here, click on some links. Fortunately, and this is something that I learned from mobile apps, looking at mobile apps, there's never a logo on a mobile app. You will never find a widget on a mobile app. They're not there. Sub-navigation, maybe if necessary, behind some kind of link. It will always be the focus on the content. Now, this is an excellent example that was created by our biggest competitor in the Netherlands. I hate this, that I have to say this. I mean, we didn't make this thing. We were not involved at all, but it's brilliant. This is one of the best things that's been made ever, probably. So this is the Rijksmuseum site. It's a big museum in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And now, if you were in the museum and you saw this little statue of a rabbit, and it's really this small, you can now go to the website and you will see a full-size image of the rabbit, much bigger than the original one. And as if that's not enough, you can zoom in, and you can zoom in even more. I mean, they made the experience for the people at home better than the experience in the museum. And this is radical change, especially for museums. Museums were always, oh, this is our content, and we'll only show a small picture, so you cannot steal it. And people don't want to. And actually, what the Rijksmuseum says, please steal it. They give you options here to share, and they give you options to cut it up even. And if you want to, you can order a print of this zoomed-in version if you want to. This is incredible. This is fantastic. The Rijksmuseum really, really gets it. And if you look closely, where's the logo? There's no logo, because there's no need for a logo, right? They have a good brand. It's clear that you're on the Rijksmuseum site. And then when you scroll down, you'll get the widgets, and you'll get the craft. But it's not really, they have a very good focus. I really love this site. This is amazing. Now we can learn a thing or two for code. So this is a, you should put this in your user style sheet. It makes the web beautiful. Easy, nice to read. And you could do this too, because who needs logos, right? And of course, we have things we can learn from ourselves. So we've been working on the web for quite a while. And this is pretty bad code, right? This is generated. So there are a few things we can learn from ourselves. And now I'm going to show you some failures, so that's bad. So I showed the best project of our biggest competitors, and I'm only going to show our own failures. But first, let me start with this. So a few years ago, Ethan Marcotte wrote this fantastic article about responsive web design. And I said, oh, I can do that. So what I created was this beauty of a website. And what happens when you make it smaller is, aha, look, the menu goes to the right. And then it goes to the left. And then to the top again. And why did I do that? Because I can, right? That's the only reason. There's not a real good reason to do this. It was just, oh, wow, look at what we can do. And I created this site actually for our sales guys, the salespersons where I work. So they would be amazed and would show them, look at how beautiful this is. And you can sell this to our clients and everybody's happy. Didn't work out that way. They said, no, we cannot sell this. This is too hard. There's no clear thing. They were wrong about that, of course. But they were right about one thing. This was too complex. This was unnecessarily complex. Why would you want to do this? It's not necessary, right? We could have said, okay, we'll just keep the navigation to the right all the time until it doesn't fit. There's no reason to change these layouts. So if I want to maintain this website, I'll have to maintain 4 different layouts, which is a lot of work, and 4 code bases probably. So, and there's another example. KLM came to us a few years ago and they said, we want something for the iPad. Something for, and they expected us to say, oh yeah, we need an iPad app. But I said, no, you have this website, and this was the website back then, and it's terrible to use on a tablet because these links are too small, and so if I want to press this link, I will press this select box. Everything is too small. So I told them we should optimize this for touch devices, not just the iPad, for every touch device around, which sounded like a very good idea. So we would just make everything a little bit bigger if you had a touch device. And the other thing I wanted to do, because I thought this website was just filled with clutter. There was all this clutter, and there was all this bloat, and then there was all this craft, and there was even a lot of nonsense. And I said, well, while we're at it, we can just remove all this stuff, and it will be much easier, right, to make these different layouts. And this actually was a very, very good idea. And I showed it to KLM, and they said, no, we need that logo up there. This is not going to happen. So what I did instead, I created this layout. So this was the touch-optimized layout. And we were all very happy because, wow, this is new and this is nice. Look at it. Look at that big button, the shiny button. And oh, these things are big. That's amazing. And I made the logo smaller. I didn't tell them, but I did it. That was probably the best thing I did on this site. So, because the issue is, now I had this layout, and I had this layout. And the next thing they wanted was not something for the iPad, but they wanted a new login thing here. Shit, because this looks completely different on this one, right? So now I had 2 design issues I had to solve. So I had this one, and I had this one. So this is not actually progressive enhancement, I think. What I did here was progressively reshuffle the craft on the page and creating an extra problem because a maintainability problem with it. So I contacted KLM a few weeks after this got live, and I asked them, are you happy with it? Yeah, we're very happy with it. And I told them, I'm not really so happy with it. I think it was not the best idea. And they said, actually that was what we were thinking too, but we didn't dare to tell you. So, and then we decided, 3 months later, we took it offline. And that was a good idea. Well, not really, because then we had the bad website again, the bad homepage again, which was unusable. But if you look at the homepage right now, this is the new homepage, there's no touch detection here. We just use the big shiny buttons for everybody, because they are very well usable for people with a mouse, right? You don't need thick fingers to press on a big button, but you need a pointer to press on a small button. So this is not perfect. I mean, we're still working on it. But I think this is at least much easier. We now have just one thing less to care about. We don't have to optimize it for a separate touch device. So we call this keep it simple, right? Just keep things as simple as possible. Now, I saw this example of a responsive form lately, where you can, when you grow this form, you can put the labels to the left, and when it's wider, you can float them to the right. And why would you do this? Well, actually, to me it looks like because you can, right? There's no real reason why you should do this. Because if you look at it, this is actually a great form to use for everybody on every resolution. And there's just one form that you have to design and one form that you have to maintain. There's no reason to create several forms, several layouts. Of course, and I like this one. Now we have the measure for the people who write stuff too. We can use the measure for them. And on this one, this is too wide for people to write. Okay, this is not this is not because it can be used, of course. There are many different kinds of form, but for a simple form, I wouldn't optimize for different screen sizes. Just keep the simple one. For a more complex form like this one, sure you should, because in this way you show the people some kind of grouping of what they have to do. So it could be good to optimize for bigger screens, but it's not always necessary. And I think you should actually try to look at not at the differences, but look at what can be the same, that you don't have to change things. If you don't have to change things, it's better. Jeffrey Zeltman did a talk the day before yesterday in Oslo, and there he showed his one-column blog, and he said, when I published this, people said, it's not responsive because it doesn't change, but it's very responsive because it responds to what needs to be done. There's no reason to change the layout if you don't have to. Now, but there's one thing bothering me about everything that we do, and that's that everything we do is so sensible. But that's logic, right? We are developers, we are designers. We are here to solve problems, not to cause problems. So if we investigated something and then we find out that this is actually slowing our website down, we won't investigate that further. We'll leave it there and won't go on with this. And I think we might be losing out on some nice ideas. I'm not sure, but it could be. So what I would like to have the influence of artists on the web. I would like to learn something from artists, because artists, they know how to work with flexible things. They know, I mean, they can make a small painting, or you can go close to a painting and see the fat paint on it, the thick paint on it, or it can be very thinly painted on cardboard. Artists have always been working with this, right? Are you very close to the work of art? Is it more far away? Artists think about these things. Is it on a gray background or is it on a pink background? These are things that they care about, what they think about. For instance, this one is very interesting. It's more than 500 years old, I think. And what you are seeing is two men standing there. What I am seeing here, this weird blob here, is a skull. So even back then, for sure back then, they were thinking about where in the room are you standing and looking at the work of art. So these are things that artists have always been thinking about, been playing about. How do people perceive our work? And this is especially interesting for people on the web, because we don't know how you will see our website, right? I really don't know. Everybody will have a different configuration, different browser. I have no idea what my work will look like on your device. The same goes for sculptures. Is it a small one that you can touch? Is it a huge one that you want to stand far away from? Is it a nice one, a nice little one in a tree that's really part of the environment? Or is it in another way connected to the environment that you really want to drive around it as fast as possible? These are things that artists think about or should think about. This wonderful example in Venice, in the Guggenheim Museum. And then when you look outside, there's this beautiful statue of this man who's very happy on his horse. And if you walk around it, you'll see he's really, really, really happy. It's a wonderful statue right there next to the Canal Grande, where you have these Catholics every year coming by in procession, and there's this man. Hi there, Bishop. Wonderful. So artists think about this stuff, right? They think about it, and I want them on the web, but I think then first we have to define what is web art. Now, Brett Victor, in one of his brilliant talks, one of his many brilliant talks, he defined computer art as without behavior, it's not native. So he said, if you create a Photoshop, you make something beautiful with Photoshop, then what you're actually doing is emulating a painting, or you're emulating a photo. You're not really creating computer art, it's a photo. You have a new tool, but you're doing the same thing as painters have been doing all along, just with a new tool. But once you add behavior to it, so once people can interact to it, then it becomes computer art. So he says, computer art, we should look at game design if we want to make computer art. This is where we should get our inspiration from. Now, I took this idea, I really liked this idea. I really liked it, so I kept thinking about it, and I thought, without adaption, it's not the web. So, of course, you have to be able to interact with it, and you have to click on links, but if it doesn't adapt to it and its environment, you're actually emulating paper. And I think we've been doing that with many of our designs, where we said, okay, we have 1,024 pixels, and we'll fit everything in there, and we'll not think about anything else. This actually broke the web. So I think without adaptation, it's not the web. And when I thought about this, I couldn't find any artist who was really experimenting and playing with the web, until I found this guy, Raphael Rosendahl, and he's actually working with the web. He used to make Flash animations, but then he switched to the web because he thought it was much more interesting. Flash was actually always trying to give the artist a feeling of well, what you make is what the other people will see, right? And Raphael liked the idea that the browser is very different from other media. And there's other things. I like this one very much, that he said, best of all, we have a lack of history. We can just do whatever we want. We have no old rules. We have our own rules to make. And he comes up with this list of points. Some of them are, of course, very obvious, like the size of a browser can change at any moment. I think this is very important if you think about designing for the web. Colors are rendered differently, right? If it's rendered on this screen, or if it's rendered on a calibrated screen of a photographer, or if it's rendered at a screen of somebody at home who smokes all day in front of his computer. That will be very yellowish rendering of your beautiful website. So you should test on those things too. Try to get your hand on a second-hand Dell computer somewhere. I like this one too. So the computers are good at generating random numbers. We could use that. We can create cool stuff with that. Right? Random colors, random things. It doesn't have to look the same every time, right? We can play with those things. We have code to play with. And there's another point. The image can be consumed in many, many different ways. So let me go back to this balls example of me. So I painted this on my wall, I remember. Then I created this website because I wanted to thank Mike Kuss, the creator of this illustration. I said, how can I thank him? I can send him a book, but that's boring. Oh, but I can create websites. So I'll just create his illustration as a website, I'll put it online, and I'll give it to him. Here's a URL, and this is yours. So I did that. But what I also did was I thought, this is the web, right? It should adapt. So we can do things like this. We can actually adapt the... This is terrible. You shouldn't do this with a real website. This is just so contradictory to what I said, to keep things simple. But I did this, and this is, I think, the web. We can do this with the web. But not just this. So if you look at this, it's just a collection of balls, right? Now, how would we mark this thing up? So what would this look like? What should this thing look like on a browser that cannot display border radius, that doesn't understand what that does? Should we show squares? Then it's a completely different thing, right? We shouldn't show that. So what it looks like on Opera Mini is this. Balls. Two connected balls, a blue ball, a blue ball. A red ball, two connected balls, a white ball, a white ball. And now, okay, people don't see the image, but they can imagine the image, right? And they even see the colors. That's nice. That's helpful. If you're an Internet Explorer, you won't see the colors. It doesn't matter. We describe the colors. They can even make up their own colors. That's even better. And when you're blind and you have a screen reader with voice family, would that exist? Voice family poetic, it will say balls. Two connected balls, a blue ball, a red ball, etc., etc. This is why I love the web. This is why I really like the web. We can do stuff like this. We can create things that look completely different on an old Internet Explorer thing, but still get the same message through. I love it. So please go on, create beautiful stuff on the web with the wonderful tools that we have. Thank you very much.